Hey, Bob, how are you?
Hey, are we on?
We're on now, yeah. So be clean.
We are, because I'm sitting here having lunch at the Giants facility
Yeah.
with Al Michaels. And I said, let me get out of your hair. You eat your lunch, and as you know, if you know Al at all, the lunch consists only
Yes.
of meats and proteins, no vegetables. He's never touched a vegetable in his life. So he has 2 slices of grilled chicken plus 1 patty. No, he has the patty, but bunless burger on his plate. I said, Al, let me get away from this table so I'm not yakking in your ear.
Yeah.
And he said, no, stay here and put me on the show, because Al is desperate for the kind of exposure that, you know, a guy doesn't really get when he's on 3-4 hours a night every Sunday night.
Well, this is a treat. I got the giants of the industry here.
So we're shooting, and the Giants themselves,
And
but
the Giants
they've
themselves.
lost 5 or 6 in a row, so maybe they're not really the Giants with a lowercase g these days.
Well, that's interesting, because you guys have the Giants this week playing the, all of a sudden, everybody's pick for the doormat this year, the Cowboys, who are on top of things. There's crazy stuff in New York. One of the things I wanted to get your take on is with Eli Manning, who's having a rough year and throwing a lot of picks. And, you know, I was watching a game, and they were talking about how the new offensive coordinator had completely re-racked his technique. They changed his drop back. He's dropping back on a different foot, and I thought, why on earth would you mess with something like that? I feel like we're seeing the results.
We're seeing at least the early results. There's no question, because they've had to adapt to it. He himself said that. He's got to forget. He told me earlier in the season, I have to forget everything that I learned before, and that includes in seasons in which they twice won the Super Bowl. So there's that learning curve. And then there are other problems. Victor Cruz got hurt.
Yeah.
The rookie Odell Beckham Jr. is emerging, but if they had both of them, they'd have a double threat. And, you know, Eli has always been kind of an up-and-down quarterback. When he's on, he is very, very good. And when he's off, you know, then he does not resemble the Super Bowl Eli Manning.
In terms of Tom Coughlin, you know, it's, New York is such a seismic environment to have any kind of job security. You're closer to that situation certainly than we are. What's your sense of this and the ramifications for Coughlin, who's no kid anymore either?
No, he's the oldest coach in the league. He's an extremely admirable guy, because he comes to work with a level of enthusiasm that not only belies his age, but some seasons belies the team's fortunes and their record. You know, if they arrive at the end of the year at 4-11, well, then he wants to make sure they win that game to finish 5-11. It makes a difference to him, and that's the way he prepares, and that's the way he addresses his team. And the Giants themselves are a somewhat conservative organization. They don't make moves. The Mara family doesn't make moves just to shoot from the hip. So they're going to give a guy, especially a guy who's given them great service and is an admirable, possible future Hall of Famer like Coughlin, they're going to give it serious consideration before they either ask him to step aside or make the move themselves. But eventually they have to take into account, A, how the team is doing, B, his advancing age, and C, even the greatest coaches, sometimes a team just turns them off or tunes them out, I should say. You know, and you've heard managers and coaches in the past say, you know what, after a while, they need a different voice. I've said everything I can say. After a period of time goes by, a fresh face and a fresh voice is needed. And maybe it's getting to that point with the Giants.
Yeah, it's the way they alternate players, coaches, and hard asses. You know, that seems to be the formula. I think it's interesting that you've got a GM and a coach there who won a Super Bowl pretty recently. And, you know, it's so New York that these guys are suffering. I mean, what we'd give to have that in other cities in the NFL. I'm also intrigued by the fact that, I think that, you know, one of the handicaps of being an NFL fan right now is there are about 7 guys who can really play winning quarterback, and the rest of the teams are almost out of it before the season begins. And so, you know, in New York, you got a guy who won 2 of these things. You've got a real quarterback, and the hastiness is kind of shocking. We're joined by Bob Costas, by the way. Nick Bakay sitting in for Rich Eisen. And Bob, I got to tell you, I have a friend at work who's not the world's biggest sports fan and watched you doing what you do so well about a year ago and was not even aware of who you were, and came to work the next day and said, you know who I like is this Bob Costas fella. I think he's got a future. So I just want you to know it's all roses for you.
No, good. Good. I'll make the most of the 3 or 4 years I have remaining before I hit mandatory retirement age.
Any reaction
Although
for you?
in broadcasting, I guess there is no mandatory retirement age. Vin Scully's going to be 87
Exactly.
in a few days.
Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey went to the
age.
grave with a microphone. Good day, right?
Right. Paul Harvey, one last time. Good day.
My favorite one was the story about a woman who had given a gorilla a 56-word vocabulary, and he used all that space and those beautiful Paul Harvey pauses, and he said, "The monkey finally spoke to the woman. The monkey's final words, long pause, set me free." Paul Harvey, good day. It was, you just can't. I miss him. I miss him.
I loved him. I absolutely loved it. It didn't even matter to me what the content was. The delivery was so wonderful and will never be duplicated or approached.
Oh, absolutely. And his product shilling was fantastic, too. It was like old medicine show stuff. Real quick, NFC East, looking at the quarterback situation, I thought it was really interesting what happened with RG3 and his coach last week. I think it's the first time I've ever heard a coach call a quarterback out specifically and saying sometimes he's reading the wrong side of the field. He takes the wrong drop. It was so preemptive, and I thought, is this because RG3 has sort of already established himself as a coach killer, or is this a guy just who really wants to start Colt McCoy? What is going on there?
Or option 3, just really wants his team to get another quarterback this season already pretty much down the drain.
Yeah.
Get another quarterback so that he has a chance to have a decent run there. Whether RG3 is a coach killer based on what happens in the locker room or post-game comments, I'm not remotely close enough to it to know. But whether it's because of the injury that he sustained in the playoffs last year when they shouldn't have played, or 2 years ago rather, against Seattle, or whether it's because he's not as well suited to the NFL as we previously thought, whatever the reason, RG3 is A, not yet a winning or accomplished quarterback, and B, seemingly a lightning rod. Some of that's modern media, but some of it he's playing into himself. And if you're Gruden, you're thinking, you know what? I got to win some games, and I got to win them fairly quickly because Dan Snyder is not as patient a man as John Mara. So that's probably what's going through Gruden's mind.
Oh, I like that. You brought that whole thing full circle, Bob. That is professional grade work. Any reaction quick to the snow in my hometown of Buffalo, New York? Any words of hope for the people?
Nick, I just hope that they dug Paul McGuire out. I just hope that Paul McGuire is underneath a drift someplace, and when they go about 12 shovelfuls deep, that mustache finally emerges with icicles on it.
Oh, I love that. I remember as a young man, I used to drink at, he had a bar with former Bill Tom Sestak and McGuire's. Young Nick Bakay had some fun there, so I do hope Paul is dug out.
Paul, as you know, even during his playing days, adhered to a very strict training regimen that allowed only single digits, and that would be 9 beers on game day. So,
well, you have to keep a cool head.
Right.
And 9 beers in Buffalo is, that is, I would think, playing it pretty safe,
I'm going to tell you, this is the truth. And I know Paul will not mind my telling this story because it's part of his legend, and I say it affectionately. Paul had a deal with Anheuser-Busch, and if ever a guy was truly, authentically, genuinely endorsing and using the product he was talking about, it was Paul McGuire. So I'm playing golf with Paul McGuire, and he drank a Budweiser a hole for 18 holes. He drank 18 Budweisers. And when I tell you this, I raise my hand to God to tell you, there was no discernible difference in his demeanor or his control of his faculties on the 18th green as there was on the first tee. The man is a bull. Just totally unfazed. 18 Budweisers.
Wow.
Not that I'm advising you kids out there to follow his example, you understand.
No. Well, I certainly have a new hero. That's incredible. And also, you can make the case that he was just doing his job, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Normally, when you say, you finish out and you tally up the scores, you say, let's head to the 19th hole. But
Right.
for Paul, it was all the same.
Yeah.
Okay, Budweiser number 19 coming
Yeah.
up.
The 19th hole was redundant. Nice. Bob, thank you so much for jumping on with us. I really appreciate it. I know you got a busy day going on, and please, for the love of God, get Al to at least try the succotash, okay?
Hey, Al. Nick Bakay says, try the succotash. I'm waiting for his response, but he doesn't want to speak with a mouthful.
It's not going to go well. I have a bad feeling. Bob, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Tell Robin I said hi. See ya.
I sure will. Thank you.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.